Hello, I'm Jallomoth, the curator of all things curious, and today's short video is all about these adorable little flying Goombas the JJK fandom has come to know and love, the Kogane. And who better to ask for help in finding the very best one than the woman herself?
Hi, I'm the Kogane. That's right, the Kogane. And self-proclaimed expert on our darling little gremlins with wings. Tengen first introduced us to the Kogane as an individually assigned Shikigami for the players of the Culling games. But even more than that, these little beasties are indeed the very first reference we ever have to a game master. And that's a lot of power for something that looks like a flyhead to have. But as the story goes on, we see the different uses, capabilities, and stylizations of the little fellas. Each sorceress, for the most part, takes on both verbal and visual representations of their players' personalities. And part of my fascination with them is how players figure out ways to use their Kogane differently. For example, Kashimo shocking the shit out of Panda when he uses Kogane to verify Panda as a player. It's like if Siri or Alexa could be personalized for us specifically. You know, outside of advertisements.
I couldn't have said it better myself. But as the Kogane, does it make you uncomfy picking your favorites? Are they all like your children or cousins or something?
Honestly, I'd never considered favoritism amongst my babies until you showed up with the idea. But regardless of whether I'd considered it or not, I did quickly realize I do have massive soft spots for a few of them. Some of their designs make me want to squeeze puppies, and some of their personalities make me want to try my hand at being besties with a Tamagotchi.
Yeah, these Shikigami do have a surprising amount of personality and gumption for what they do, basically just being cute little messenger birds for the participants of Kenjaku's Hunger Games remake. I had a surprisingly tough time putting one above the other, but there definitely were some outliers. Like number 17. Bottom spot goes to the Gane of Reginald Starr, maybe the most underrated character in all of JJK, along with these assorted misfits. Better call Higuruma though, because his little friend here does him no justice, easily being the worst one to me. The only thing separating his from the standard Kogane is this horrifying lipless mouth. Does that mean his Kogane sounds like this? Sounds like Gary Busey. I imagine these guys as little customizable me's or something, so to see one that's basically just a default that's been creepypasta'd, it's just lame. And it doesn't fit him either. They couldn't have at least given it his goatee or something. If I was Reggie, I'd take one of my receipts and return this freak.
Let's talk about gold diggers for a moment. Remy is, as we all know, a leech. A parasitic woman who relies on men to pay the bills and keep her alive. She relies on her cuteness and sex appeal to recruit knights and gain sympathy. Not only in life, but also in the Culling games. And her Kogane is the literal embodiment of that mentality. Those lips are the lips of a succubus. You can't unsee it now, can ya? I'm sorry, and you're welcome. Never date a girl with a Kogane like that if you want to keep your bank account intact.
Not gonna lie, I fancy myself a Ryu Ishiguri fan. But I was thinking about it, and I couldn't picture his Kogane for the life of me. But when I finally did see it, I was a little shocked. Let's run through its features one by one, okay? Starting with its heart-shaped tail. Quite a few Kogane have this trait, even ones for characters who aren't sweet at all. Second, these big heart-shaped eyes. Aw, that's actually completely unique to this one little guy. What's this last one say? Horrible bug mouth? Okay. They really fumbled this one at the finish line. I wanted to know if there was any sort of meaning to this at all, so I tried looking for myths regarding bugmen in Japan and came across a spirit, or yokai, called Shinshu. Rightfully so, Japan has always thought fondly towards bugs, especially us moths. Silkworm moths were thought to be heavenly and divine, and this beast is basically just the Buddhist Mothman. Does this have anything to do with Ryu? I'm not entirely sure. The Shinshu do have insanely large appetites that they sate by devouring curses, which sounds pretty Ishiguri to me. But if Gege would answer my letters and just get to know me, I could have told him that silkworm moths don't even have mouths. Now this little guy is creepy for no reason, poor thing.
Now let's talk about the God of Thunder, R.I.P. Its design is almost as basic as it gets. Round empty eyes, a square schnoz, and a heart-shaped tail. Regular degular. But my fascination with Kashimo's Kogane comes from its personality and the fact that it was the one who introduced the readers and at least one other player to the ways that Kogane can be used. When Kashimo is staring through the chest of his most recent victim, complaining to himself about how weak modern sorcerers are, his Kogane asks, unprompted, if he'd like to make a rule with his points. As far as the Kogane's purpose goes, this makes sense. They want the game to continue. That's their prerogative. But until this point, I hadn't realized that they'd acted on their own or made suggestions to the players like this. Most game controllers operate off of input, not prompting. Your Xbox controller isn't going to tell you to take a left at the next Goblin Fortress, you know? But this made me realize that Kogane have motivations of their own. And later, when Kashimo runs into an escaped panda from the zoo, he still has his Kogane out, which, by the way, is super flippin' adorable. Most vanished, but Kashimo's just out here hanging out with his, and he asks his Kogane to confirm whether Panda is a player or not. At this point, both Panda and I were all, oh, no way? You can use Kogane like that?
Quite a few of these low and mid-tier Kogane really only have one or two minor changes to their design, like Megumi's here. Looks like he got his tail stuck in the door. I'm less inclined to believe that it's this shape because Fushiguro shines like a diamond, and I'm leaning more towards the fact that the kid can be a little bit of a square.
My God, how can you be so obtuse? What did you call me?
I'm just gonna say this now because you'll definitely notice as this list goes on, but I am so bad at justifying rankings. And Yuji is definitely gonna be one of those. We have him at number 12, but, well, you'll see. I have reasons. Visually, Yuji's Kogane literally looks like a prototype. As plain as they come. Although his is the only one we've ever seen with the extendo scroll feature, which is kinda cool. Though generally, I do assume that aside from Angels and Uros, most are likely gonna have an interface feature like this. We just haven't seen it like we have with Yuji, so I can't be sure if that's unique to him or not. Regardless, it's definitely not the appearance that got my attention with this Kogane. It's what Yuji says to it in chapter 158. He gives his Kogane permission to take orders from Megumi Fushiguro. And, I don't know if y'all read chapter 248, but Kenny used the Kogane's rules to deliver his last will and testament, giving Megumi Fushiguro, or rather the four-armed nightmare squatting in his body, control over the merger with Tengen. I'm not sure what this means yet, but knowing that Sukuna has control of Yuji's Kogane makes me nervous. Could he steal Yuji's remaining points and create a new rule to force the merger onto Yuji? Would that finally make Yuji interesting enough as a main dish for him? Sukuna was supposed to have given all of his points to Kenny after hitching a ride from the bath to Yorozu and Sendai, so Sukuna will need to get his numbers up if that's his plan. A more positive possibility is Megumi himself taking advantage of this, by using the chance to transfer the merger to Yuji, knowing that if any vessel could contain the blob, it's gonna be Yuji Itadori. But then again, that would require Megumi to, wake up, so...
Is Chizuru Hari the most forgettable character in Shonen? He's definitely up there. Or down there. Right now he's 6 feet under. Not just for underestimating Megumi and his dogs, but also for entrusting his life to a crackhead wearing a dress made out of McDonald's receipts. Chizuru isn't useless, he did have like 30 points or something in the Culling game, but the dude got cold before we could even see what his technique did. All we saw was that he has those finger claws that you make out of paper in the 2nd grade, which is probably why his Kogane has this sickle-shaped tail. And yeah, that really is his only unique trait. I have even less to say about this thing than the guy it's based off of. I'm not mad at this little fella, he just really isn't my special.
When you think of Yuta Okotsu's character design, what is the first thing that comes to mind? If you didn't say the bags under his eyes, I'm so sorry, but you are wrong. The only thing more bottomless than Yuta's curse energy are them I haven't slept since I was 6 years old eye bags he's got. And lo and behold, his Kogane reflects that perfectly. 2 hollow teardrops under each eye are such an accurate way to represent who Yuta is. Y'all remember in Volume 0 when Yuta was losing his mind over how amazing his friends were while Rika was all ratcheting up behind him in a pool of black cursed energy? That's what the tears on Yuta's Kogane remind me of. It's not an over-the-top design, but it's so perfectly suited to who Yuta is.
If I can guess whose Kogane it is just by looking at it, that's an immediate 10 points. And Kamo's is just him. Obviously his biggest seller is this awesome 3-pointed tail, but past that it's really not much special. Just like Kamo. Wow, this one really is awesome.
First things first, if you know me, you know I love Hazanoki. That backwoods hillbilly and his overalls have always been a favorite of mine. And lucky me, his Kogane is just as interesting. Button eyes make it look like something Hazanoki used to drag around as a child on his way to make bootleg moonshine in the woods with his pawpaw. But even beyond its design, this Kogane was one of the first that made me realize the depth of understanding these little fellas have of the sorcerers that they're assigned to. When Megumi finishes off the receipt merchant, Hazanoki's Kogane pops up to deliver the news that Master Reggie is dead. There's no reason for the game to need to notify Iori of this, especially considering the decision he made upon hearing the news. He decided to leave the game. It's not in the Kogane's best interest to influence a player to leave. It's their job to keep the game going. So what was that? Compassion? Loyalty? Man, who knows? But it sure made me realize that these little guys truly understand their sorcerers.
We're at about the halfway point here, and I just want to say big thanks to my patrons, especially my Emperor Moths Gambit935, Hoops McCann, Daymare, Joe Wheelcar, and Lolquak. He's not an Emperor like the rest, but I do feel bad for mispronouncing his name in the iceberg video I just did. Also, shout out to my one and only YouTube member, Quander. I'll do more of my rambling later, but for now let's get on to the best of the best, starting back up with number 7, Yorozu. You already know I called dibs on talking about the bug suit lady. Yorozu is one of the coolest characters personality-wise, design-wise, and she really doesn't get enough love. Hopefully the anime will eventually fix that and she'll get the hype she deserves. I wonder how they're going to animate the liquid metal. What color do you guys think her armor's going to be? Oh man, I hope she has a good voice actress.
Jallo. Reality.
Right. Yeah. Her Kogane is stellar. Adorable little thing, has by far my favorite eyes of the bunch with these cute little SpongeBob eyelashes. Also, look at her nose. This little weirdo could probably charge my phone. What do you think would happen if I stuck a fork in there?
Get yourself a glass of water, Jallo. This is what happens when you let a moth talk about Yorozu. So number 6 on our list is on the opposite end of the girly Gane spectrum. It's Hannah's. And it sparkles. Literally. This adorable little cherub is another unique design. It has what kind of looks like a crystal ball in its belly, acting as its interface. And it's not just the design that's adorable. The sweet little thing acts autonomously to let Hannah and co know about the 800 plus soldiers entering the barrier. Who knows what could have happened without that heads up? Gotta give props to little guardian angel Kogane. And did I mention it sparkles?
There is a universe not unlike our own where this Kogane is at the top of our list. The only reason there are any above this is honestly just preference, because we've already reached S tier. With a crystal ball right in her chest, similar to Hana's, this Kogane has a bizarrely cool way of displaying its info. And she's got the arrow-shaped tail, which I hope we can all agree is the cooler of the two main tail types.
Hey!
My favorite thing about Uro's though is for sure these goat eyes. Those wacky sideways pupils will always be a staple of my character design philosophy.
Any Kogane that jump scares Yuji has a special place in my heart, and that absolutely includes the utter gentleman that is Higgy's Kogane. That dapper little fellow with all them manners and that perfectly groomed Captain Hook looking mustache are perfect. It's also interesting how prim and proper Higuruma's Kogane is in comparison to Judgeman. I mean, do y'all remember when it convicted Yuji? That thing got so riled up its eye stitches split wide open and it started screaming like the domain was an episode of Maury instead of a courtroom. I could never imagine Higgy's Kogane going feral like that. Just a little juxtaposition in Higgy's Shikigami I've always been fascinated with. I have so many reasons to fixate on Kenny's Kogane. And the first 2 reasons are its 2 front teeth. Them twofers are exquisite and y'all know it. The amount of design variation the Kengane has blows almost all other Kogane out of the water. The personalization kinda makes me wish the others were as unique as this.
Yeah, I've always thought those hyper rare double wings were super cool.
That's so true. But I do have to admit that a big part of this Kogane's charm are the interactions we see with Kenny. We really got to see its dweebness shine when Kenny was programming that glitch. I'll never get over the amount of detail that Gege put into a bullied Kogane's face. Ever. That glitch did make me wonder though. If the one recognized by the Kogane is Geto Suguru, then how did the Kogane assigned to him end up with stitches? I mean, technically, it's Geto Suguru's Kogane, right? I mean, does Megami's look different now after Sukuna took over? Wait. Would that mean that the Kogane recognizes vessels in some capacity?
Alright, I'm supposed to be the one that's going off the deep end. You go take a breather. I need to throw myself down a bottomless rabbit hole for a second. If I politely asked you to guess who has the most unique Kogane of them all, who would be your guess? I'll give you a moment. Your answer would most likely be somebody with A, a pretty complicated character design, or B, a pretty complicated character in general. That's why I was shocked to realize that our answer, by far, is Mio Rokujushi, the king of sumo. This is hilarious because not only does he have the most simple design in JJK, he's also by far the most simple guy in Gege's entire bibliography. All the guy wants is to wrestle. With a dog, with a kid, with a granny, with you or with I, who cares? But despite this simple origin, Gege decided to pour more time and love into his Kogane's design than he did with Yuki's entire arc. Is it even called an arc if it blows up before its crest? But seriously, I can't get over this. No character in this whole story has a Kogane that more accurately represents who they are. The ring on its tail, for instance, is reminiscent of the sumo circle, and the ring on its head actually has 3 meanings. Firstly, and obviously, it represents the circle, the sumo, his everything. But if you look closely, you'll see that it actually has these little radial spikes that call to mind his hairstyle that he never should have left the house with. But lastly, and most importantly, it clearly shows the sun, which is a perfect display of how he showed Maki the light. It's his enlightenment. My, and probably your biggest question though at this point has got to be, what's with the bird beak? My first guess was that this guy's just a silly goose. But then I remembered, there's actually a biblically accurate silly goose in Japan, the kappa. Let me tell you a little bit about these mythic yokai. Known as Children of the River, Kappa are these reptilian men with bird beaks and turtle shells that are known to assault humans when going too deep into their habitat. But get this, they have a pretty distinctive hairstyle and love sumo wrestling. You might be skeptical of this connection though, because these guys also drown dogs and you have to fart on them to get them to leave, but I can assure you this was intentional, as Daido refers to Mio like this directly when talking about Maki's awakening. Did that Kappa do something? Something this makes me consider though is, was Mio even a person? He's a reincarnation of someone from a long time ago, dropped into a new form, supposedly. But what if instead of being a reincarnated person who's obsessed with sumo, he was a reincarnated spirit? Maybe that's why it was so obvious to Daido, and why his Kogane displays him as such. And while this is almost positively just figurative, I think him being a spirit inhabiting a human's body could make some sense and be cool, especially when looking at how socially inept he is. Speaking of inept reincarnated spirit men...
Man, you really weren't kidding about diving down a rabbit hole, were ya?
Yeah, surely you thought Mio's was first after sitting through my thesis paper about the floating rat that follows him around. But you're wrong, because he's perfect. Look at this thing. Mio and Daido are two peas in a pod, and the symbolism surrounding the former does definitely show in the latter. What I mean by that is that Daido might also represent, or just be, a yokai. This time not a Kappa, but a Tengu. Tengu are these mischievous reincarnated spirits who live a boisterously proud, near arrogant life. They're natural spirits who have a deep understanding of the world around them and their place in it. They're also frequently portrayed as master swordsmen. That is Hagane Daido, down to the reincarnation. The chief of these Tengu is the greatest swordsman of them all, and wear these very iconic long-nosed masks. Does this disgruntled face immediately conjure up Daido for anybody else? Much like Rokujushi, he's a reincarnated Culling Games player with the will of a lion. From the second he gained consciousness, all he wanted was a sword. He comes from a time where the katana was the very soul of the Japanese man. But because the average person in 2018 isn't just lugging one of those things around, he has a massive breakdown. Manically sprinting through the Sakurajima streets with tears flowing down his face, he is the art of swordplay personified. The most interesting thing about him is he's a non-sorcerer. He doesn't even have cursed energy, he can't even see it. Yet slices the most durable cursed spirit we've ever seen like butter with nothing but his sheer lethality. And a completely busted sword, but...
Yeah, that's right, Jello. Give my baby girl her props.
Hagane is a freak of nature in the best way possible, and I can do nothing but admire his will. The same will that manifested his Kogane to have a katana for a tail, eyes that tell me he's nothing but locked in, and a mustache so big and influential that it transcends his corporeal form. I guarantee he had that Pringles stash in every single one of his past lives. Much like Mio, it's that confidence in who he is that stands out to me, and as odd as it sounds, it really shows in their Kogane. Maybe the reason Megumi, Yuji, and alike don't have super unique and personalized Kogane is simply because they don't know who they are or what they want. At least, nowhere near as much as these two. I think what really puts Daido's at the top for me is the tragedy of it. He's got the cutest one of them all, and he can't even see it.
Can I be honest with y'all? Just for a second? Don't tell anybody what I'm about to admit, okay? I wish Maki had a Kogane. I know, she's not recognized as a player, whatever. But just imagine with me for a moment, a Kogane covered in burn scars, and tell me you don't wish she had one too. See, you do get it. And what about Hikari's? Personally, I imagine its interface looking like a slot machine, and its eyes sort of like coin slots. What about you, Jallo? Any characters with unrevealed Kogane you're dying to see?
What are we doing? Build a Gane? Kurara's probably would have had star eyes, and that would have been cute. And for all my bugs out there, I probably should say Kurorushi, because we knew he had one, even though I know his wouldn't be too pretty. Takaba's would have been nice to see too, but I'm gonna be honest, my number one pick is so biased, they aren't even a Culling Games player. You already know it's Choso. Honestly, this whole Star Plasma trio are my top picks. Like Tengen's with 4 eyes or our Lord and Saviors. I'm not even gonna assume what Yuki's is though, because blasphemy is a sin. And the last thing I want is to get stuck in hell with these guys.
Speaking of blasphemy, we do have one honorable mention on this list, and it's me, the Kogane. I know, shameless self-promo, but I wouldn't be the Kogane if I didn't push my own agenda, now would I? Go check out my channel. I audiobooked both JJK light novels, and I run my mouth about my thoughts at the end of each chapter section. And let's be honest, if you've made it this far in the video, you're clearly fine with me running my mouth. So go and subscribe and stuff.
Go on, you heard the lady. And hey, you're not an honorable mention, you're number 1. Never short sell yourself. I made myself number 1 on a list of Japanese mascots like 2 months ago. Oops, I did not mean to spoil that video. Maybe go check it out after subbing to Kogane here for her wonderful and gracious contribution to this super fun little romp.
Jallo, your hospitality is unmatched. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about my favorite little critters ever. And by the way, the other Kogane and I took a vote, and we've decided to declare you Sir Jallomoth, an honorary Kogane.
Whoa, you really mean it?
I mean, you already have wings anyway. Wait, you do have wings, right?
Yeah, they're lying around here somewhere. This place is a maze.
Yeah, when you said that on the phone, I didn't think you meant literally.
Sorry. I'll show you the way out. Tune in next week for whatever I've got going on here. Haven't decided yet. In the meantime, stay healthy, stay hydrated. Here, you want to do the honors?
Absolutely. And as always, stay curious.
Nice.